Most people believe global conflicts are fought over oil. They picture pipelines in the desert, burning rigs, soldiers guarding wells. They assume whoever owns the oil controls the world. That belief is comforting because it feels simple, but it's wrong. Oil has never been the prize. Oil is just the bloodstream. The real power lies elsewhere. It lies in who controls how oil is priced, who controls how oil is paid for, who controls the system that decides who gets access and who is cut off. Once you understand this, modern history stops looking chaotic. Iraq wasn't a mistake. Iran isn't an obsession. Venezuela isn't incompetence. And China is not watching from the sidelines. In the early 2000s, Iraq made a decision that barely registered with the public, but sent shockwaves through the global financial system. Iraq didn't threaten to shut down oil production. It didn't attack another nation. Instead, it began questioning the currency system behind oil itself. For decades, oil had been priced and settled almost entirely in US dollars. This arrangement, known as the petrodollar system, created permanent global demand for the dollar, anchoring US financial dominance. Iraq challenged that structure. By moving away from dollar-based settlement, Iraq wasn't just selling oil differently, it was threatening the foundation of global trade. That's when Iraq stopped being framed as unstable and started being described as dangerous. The lesson was unmistakable. You can disagree politically, you can oppose militarily, but challenge the system and the consequences are existential. Fast forward to today. China doesn't need to invade oil-rich nations. It doesn't need to raise flags or occupy fields. China controls oil by controlling the exits. Through long-term purchase agreements that lock in supply for decades, through oil for debt structures that convert loans into guaranteed energy flows, through shadow shipping networks that bypass traditional oversight, through non-dollar settlement routes that quietly weaken currency dependence. Iran became a case study. Despite sanctions, Iran exports roughly 1.4 to 1.6 million barrels per day, most of it flowing to China at discounted rates, moved quietly through indirect channels. Venezuela followed a similar path. With production collapsing and access to Western finance cut off, China stepped in as financier, buyer, and creditor, receiving oil as repayment for debt. This isn't charity, it's leverage. China wasn't just buying oil, it was controlling what happens after sanctions. It was building a parallel system, one that operates quietly, efficiently, and outside traditional Western control. So how do you confront a system you can't bomb? You don't launch invasions, you break control chains. Modern pressure doesn't start with missiles, it starts with paperwork. Sanctions stop targeting nations and start targeting infrastructure. Shipping firms that move the crude, insurance companies that protect the tankers, ports that allow docking, refiners that process the oil, payment rails that clear the transactions. This isn't military warfare, it's financial warfare. Tankers are detained at sea, insurance is revoked overnight, payments are frozen mid-transfer, because oil can hide underground, but it can't hide on the ocean. Once you control who ships it, who insures it, and who settles the money, you don't need to own the oil fields. You own the system that decides who gets paid. This is the real lesson Iraq taught the world. Oil itself is replaceable. Systems are not. Currency dominance determines trade. Trade determines power. And power determines survival. That's why Iran matters. That's why Venezuela matters. And that's why China sits at the center of this story, even when the headlines avoid saying it out loud. This isn't about ideology or morality, it's about architecture. Empires don't collapse when resources disappear. They collapse when settlement systems shift, when trust migrates, when trade reroutes, when control moves quietly from one framework to another. The wealthy don't argue politics, they study systems, because elections come and go, but infrastructure lasts decades. When systems shift, fortunes shift with them. When settlement changes, influence changes. When control of the bloodstream changes hands, the heart follows. Most people watch wars on screens and debate leaders, but the real conflict is happening elsewhere, in shipping manifests, in insurance contracts, in payment codes and clearinghouses. Oil was never the story, it was the signal. And once you understand that, you stop asking who has the oil and start asking who controls the system that decides who gets paid. That's the real battlefield, and that's where the future is being decided, quietly, relentlessly, and in plain sight.
Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel as we bring more insightful, informative, and impactful content like this. See you in our next video.